The first time I realised my life wasn't really mine, it was a Tuesday night in our tiny kitchen, with the faucet dripping like it was keeping time with my heartbeat. I was standing barefoot on the cold tiles, staring at the cake I had baked for my husband's promotion, the one he never came home to. The frosting was starting to crack, the candles drooping, and my phone kept lighting up with one simple message from him. Don't wait up. I used to tell myself that marriage was just a long season of compromise. Some nights were storms, some nights were calm, and if you were patient enough, the weather always changed. That's what my mother said anyway, back when I believed that suffering quietly was the same thing as being strong. Back when I thought love meant shrinking myself so someone else could feel bigger. By the time the clock touched midnight, the cake looked as tired as I felt. I slid it into the fridge, turned off the lights and crawled into bed alone. The side where my husband Daniel should have been felt cold, like no one had slept there in years. I lay there on my back, counting the cracks in the ceiling, wondering how many of them were my fault. I must have drifted off because the sound of the front door jolted me awake. Keys, a low laugh, the faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine slipping in under the bedroom door. My heart dropped into my stomach. I checked the time, 2:37 a.m. He tried to move quietly, but guilt has a way of making every little sound louder. The whisper of his shoes on the floor, the clink of glass as he poured himself water, the soft thud of his phone on the entry table, and then the voice, not his, a woman's voice muffled and laughing on speaker. I still can't believe she believes you, she said. You are so bad. He chuckled, that same easy, charming laugh he used to win me over years ago. Baby, trust me, he murmured. She believes whatever I tell her. That's what makes this so fun. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stared at the darkness and felt it stare back at me. It was one thing to suspect, another thing to hear the betrayal in your own hallway. You're awful, the woman giggled, sounding like she loved every second of it. When are you going to tell her? Why would I ruin a good thing, he said. I have a wife who cooks, cleans, pays half the bills, and thinks I'm still her hero. And I have you. I get the best of both worlds. Something inside me went very, very still. People talk about heartbreak like it's noise, like it's crying and yelling and breaking things. But mine arrived as silence. A clean, cold silence that swept through me like winter. The call ended. His footsteps moved down the hall. I rolled onto my side and shut my eyes, pretending to be asleep. The mattress dipped under his weight a few minutes later. He smelled like expensive whiskey and a floral perfume I didn't own. He didn't touch me, didn't say a word, just turned his back to me, took his phone, and lay there scrolling, the light of the screen flashing over his cheating hands. That was the night something in me cracked, even if nothing on the outside did. In the morning, he acted like nothing happened. He kissed my forehead before work, grabbed the lunch I'd packed him, and smiled with that same effortless charm he used on everyone. "You're the best, Anna," he said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I poured his coffee, watching the steam rise between us like a thin, fragile wall. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm starting to wonder that too." He didn't notice the way I looked at him. Or maybe he did, and chose to ignore it. Either way, the performance continued. He left for work and I stood in the doorway, still in my oversized t-shirt, staring at the spot where his car had been. It felt like watching someone drive away with pieces of you they never planned to return. I used to be a person before all of this. I used to paint, to write, to dream about opening my own little studio one day. But somewhere along the way, I traded those dreams for his career, his schedule, his comfort. It happened so slowly I didn't even notice I'd disappeared. That day, though, something different happened. Instead of cleaning up the kitchen, instead of pretending everything was fine, I pulled the cake back out of the fridge. I sliced a piece, sat at the table and ate it for breakfast, letting the sweetness sit heavy on my tongue. "You are invisible to him," a small, sharp voice in my head said. "But you don't have to be invisible to yourself." I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning. Not of revenge. Not yet. That part would come later, darker, sharper, more dangerous than anything I'd ever imagined I was capable of. This was the beginning of something else. The night I stopped believing his version of my life and started quietly writing my own. And once I started, I realized I had been holding the pen the whole time. The strange thing about waking up from a lie is how bright everything suddenly looks, even the ugly parts you used to ignore. That morning, after Daniel left for work, I walked through our apartment slowly, almost like I was seeing it for the first time. The wilted flowers he never noticed, the stack of bills with my signature on them, the framed wedding photo on the wall where I was smiling like a woman who had no idea she was walking into a life built on half-truths. I touched the glass of the frame with my fingertips, tracing the outline of my younger self, wondering if she'd be disappointed in me or proud that I was finally waking up. I made myself coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and listened to the quiet. Not peaceful quiet, this was the kind that hummed with unfinished thoughts, the kind that made the air feel thick. I kept replaying his voice from the night, before, the softness he reserved for someone else, the cruel confidence in assuming I'd never know. The humiliation hit me in waves, but beneath it was something else, simmering low and steady. I didn't want to call it anger yet. It felt more like a warning, a shift, a tightening of something inside me that refused to be ignored anymore. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, but because the tears felt useless, like they didn't belong to the woman I was becoming. Instead, I grabbed my jacket, stepped outside, and started walking without knowing where I was going. It was cold, the kind of cold that bites through your clothes and settles into your bones, but I welcomed it. I needed the sting. I needed something real to hold on to. After 30 minutes, I ended up in front of a small art supply store I used to visit all the time, before marriage turned my life into routines and roles. I stared through the window at the brushes, the blank canvases, the rows of colours that used to make me feel alive. I stepped inside. The smell of acrylics and paper hit me like a memory I'd buried too deep. I ran my hand along the brushes and felt something loosen in my chest. The cashier, an older woman with long silver hair tied in a braid, looked up from her magazine and smiled gently. "Need help finding something?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just looking." But I wasn't just looking. I was remembering the girl who used to paint at 2 a.m, because she couldn't sleep unless she poured her feelings onto a canvas. Remembering how Daniel once told me painting was a cute hobby, but not something to waste time on when we had real-life responsibilities. Remembering how I put my brushes away one by one, thinking I was doing the right thing for our marriage. In the store, I picked up a small set of brushes and a canvas, nothing big, nothing meaningful to anyone but me, and bought them without thinking. When I stepped back outside, the wind felt different somehow, colder but sharp in a way that made me feel awake. I walked home slower, holding the bag like something fragile. When I got back to the apartment, I didn't paint, not yet. I just set the canvas on the table and looked at it. It was blank, untouched, full of possibilities, something I hadn't been in a long time. At noon, my phone lit up with a message from Daniel. "Meeting ran late. Don't wait for lunch." No heart emojis, no questions about how my day was, no acknowledgement of the fact that he came home at nearly 3 a.m. smelling like someone else. I stared at the screen and realised something simple and horrifying. If I disappeared from his life today, he wouldn't even notice until he ran out of someone to cook for him or clean after him. The thought didn't make me sad, it made me certain. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to think. Cleaning helped me move without feeling trapped. Every plate I washed, every drawer I organised, every piece of dust I wiped away felt like I was wiping off years of pretending. But when I opened Daniel's bedside drawer to tidy it, something inside caught my breath. A lipstick, not mine, a shade of deep berry red I'd never worn in my life. It rolled to the front of the drawer, mocking me. Next to it was a receipt from a fancy hotel downtown, dated 3 weeks earlier, a hotel we had never stayed in together. The room number was circled in pen. For a moment the room spun, and I gripped the nightstand to steady myself. The drowning feeling I had been holding back rushed through me like a wave. Proof. This was proof, not suspicions, not intuition, not pieces of a puzzle I was afraid to assemble. This was the final, undeniable truth. And yet, instead of collapsing, I straightened. A strange calm washed over me, cold but empowering. He thought I would never find out. He thought I would stay small, quiet, obedient. He thought I needed him. Perhaps I did once. But now I only needed clarity. I placed the lipstick and the receipt on the bed, sat down, and stared at them as the daylight faded. How long had I been living in a lie? How many smiles had he faked? How many nights had he come home and kissed me with the taste of another woman on his lips? My hands shook, not with fear, but with something sharper, something that tasted like awakening, that tasted like resolve. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. The woman who sat there holding another woman's lipstick wasn't the same woman who baked him a promotion cake the night before. She wasn't the woman who believed silence was strength. No, she was someone else now, someone he didn't see coming, someone he should have never underestimated. And as the sky outside turned dark, I whispered the first promise I had made to myself in years. This ends with me. The hours after I whispered that promise felt strangely quiet, like the air in the apartment was holding its breath with me. I sat on the edge of the bed, the lipstick and hotel receipt beside me, staring into a future I had never imagined for myself. I wasn't the confrontational type. I wasn't the dramatic type. I wasn't the kind of woman who flipped tables or screamed or threw clothes onto the lawn. Daniel had always counted on that. He had built his double life on the assumption that I would stay soft, predictable, blind. But sometimes it only takes one sharp truth to turn softness into steel. As evening settled in, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table with my canvas in front of me. I squeezed blue paint onto the palette, watched it curl into a small, perfect bead. I didn't even know what I wanted to paint. I just needed to move, to do something that was mine again. But as soon as the brush touched the canvas, my hand froze. I wasn't ready to create. Not yet. I was still too full of destruction. So I set the brush down and stared out the window instead, watching headlights pass through the curtains like ghosts. By the time Daniel's key turned in the lock, my pulse was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He walked in, whistling, like a man who hadn't left lipstick in his drawer and betrayal in his wake. "Long day," he sighed, tossing his jacket on the couch. "You wouldn't believe the workload." I said nothing. I just watched him move through the apartment like he owned it, like he owned me. He walked over and kissed my cheek, and for the first time in our marriage I didn't lean in. I didn't soften. I didn't offer him anything back. His lips hesitated against my skin. "Everything okay?" I forced a small smile. "Of course." He relaxed instantly. That was the thing about him. My silence was the language he understood best. He mistook it for obedience every time. He grabbed a beer from the fridge and plopped onto the couch, turning the TV on like it was any other night. I stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching the back of his head as he lounged comfortably, completely unaware that the ground beneath him had already begun to crack. I could have confronted him right then. I could have thrown the lipstick in his face, but something held me back. He didn't deserve my rage. He deserved my clarity. And I wanted him to feel the shift, not as a sudden explosion, but as a slow, suffocating realization that he was losing control. So I walked to the bedroom, collected the lipstick and receipt, and placed them inside a small box. Then I hid the box inside my art cabinet. I wasn't ready to use the evidence yet, but I would, when the time was right. That night I climbed into bed early. Daniel stayed up watching TV, laughing at something on his phone, completely oblivious to the storm building inches away. When he finally came to bed, he tried to pull me closer, but I shifted away. "Not tonight," I whispered. He sighed dramatically, turning his back to me. "You've been weird lately," he muttered. "I'm allowed to be tired, Daniel," I said. "Or is that only acceptable for you?" He didn't respond, but I felt his body stiffen. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure what version of me he was waking up to tomorrow, and that uncertainty was a kind of power I had forgotten I could wield. In the morning, I woke before him. I rarely did. I made my coffee, sat at the table, and watched the sunrise paint the kitchen in a pale gold light. It was beautiful, but it didn't soften me. Today I had a plan. Not revenge, not yet, but something simpler. Information. I needed to know who she was, how long she had been part of my life without my permission, what made her lipstick end up in my drawer and her perfume cling to my husband's clothes. I waited until Daniel left for work, after he kissed my forehead and thanked me for being so understanding, as if I had forgiven something I hadn't even mentioned. The second he walked out, I grabbed his laptop. He never let me touch it. That alone should have been a warning years ago. The password was his birthday. Pathetic. When the screen unlocked, my throat tightened. The first thing I saw was a document titled "Weekend Reservations for Us." Not me and him and her. I opened it. A list of hotels, restaurants, plans, dates, times. A whole world he had built with another woman. A world I'd never been invited into. My hands shook, but I kept scrolling. Photos, messages, plans for next time. Screen after screen blurred together until one name started repeating itself. Madison. Her name felt sharp in my mouth when I whispered it. Madison. The woman who laughed in my hallway. The woman he called baby. The woman whose lipstick had been tucked next to his wallet in our drawer. I clicked on her profile picture. She was pretty, not stunning, not intimidating, just ordinary. The kind of ordinary that made her betrayal worse somehow, because she wasn't some fantasy. She wasn't some mysterious stranger. She was real enough to ruin a marriage and casual enough to not even feel guilty about it. I leaned back, breath shallow, and then I saw the message that iced my spine. Daniel. She's clueless. I could cheat right in front of her and she'd still make me dinner. Madison. You really think she'll never find out? Daniel. Anna isn't the type to fight back. A strange smile touched my lips. Not sadness, not anger. Something colder, something quiet and dangerous. Not the type, I whispered. Not anymore. I closed the laptop. The woman I was yesterday would have cried. The woman I was this morning would have trembled. But the woman I was now. She understood that emotional devastation can be fuel, and I wasn't planning to waste a single drop. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an insult to my intelligence, my dignity, my existence. And I was going to make sure Daniel regretted every word he ever typed about me. But first, I needed to meet Madison. I didn't know what I expected to feel as I got dressed that morning, with the intention of meeting the woman who had been sleeping with my husband. Maybe rage, maybe panic, maybe the kind of shaking grief that makes you crumble in the shower and scream without sound. But instead I felt a cold steadiness inside me, a clarity that almost frightened me. I chose my outfit carefully, not glamorous, not dramatic, just clean, simple, intentional. A fitted black sweater, dark jeans, boots, my hair pulled back, my face bare except for a stroke of mascara. I didn't want to impress her. I wanted her to see me, the woman she had mocked through a phone speaker, the woman she thought was clueless, the woman she assumed would never fight back. I searched her social media again, scrolling through posts of brunches, sunsets, gym selfies, and captions full of hearts and motivational quotes. There was something sickening about how normal she seemed, how easily she had slipped into the role of someone else's thrill. I found her workplace quickly, a boutique marketing firm downtown with glass doors and a polished lobby. I didn't message her beforehand. I didn't warn her. I wanted the truth raw, unfiltered, face to face. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt endless. My heart beat loud but steady, like a slow drum guiding me towards something inevitable. When the doors opened, I stepped into a neatly arranged office space with white walls, soft music, and the faint smell of vanilla candles. A receptionist looked up with a polite smile. "Hi, welcome. Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm here to see Madison." She hesitated, unsure, glancing at her computer. "Is she expecting you?" "No," I repeated, "but she'll want to talk to me." Something in my tone must have carried weight, because she didn't push further. She walked to a glass door, knocked, then peeked inside. "Madison? Someone's here for you." A moment later, the door opened wider, and there she was, Madison, the woman whose lipstick had stained the edges of my life. She was exactly like her picture, medium height, warm brown hair styled in waves, soft makeup, expensive perfume that left a trail in the air. She looked younger than me, maybe by a few years, but not enough to explain any of this. Her eyes flicked over me with confusion. "Hi, can I help you?" "Yes," I said, "we need to talk." She hesitated, then stepped out into the hallway. "I'm sorry, do I know—" She stopped. I watched the realization hit her like a slap. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, her breath caught. "You're Anna." There was something satisfying about seeing her face drain of colour. "Yes," I said softly. "I am." For a moment she didn't speak. She just stared at me, like I had walked straight out of a nightmare she never expected to face. "Look," she whispered, I didn't know he was married." I tilted my head, studying her. "Then why did you laugh when he said I believed everything he told me?" The lie collapsed. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes shifted away. "It wasn't supposed to be serious," she muttered. "It was just fun." Fun. The word tasted rotten. "Fun," I repeated, letting the syllable fall like a stone. "You helped destroy a marriage because it was fun." She flinched. "Please, I didn't mean—" "I didn't come here to hear excuses," I interrupted. "I came here for the truth." She swallowed hard. "I didn't think he'd ever leave you," she said quietly. "He told me you were comfortable, that you didn't care, that you two barely talked anymore." My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "Did you believe him?" She shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. I didn't think about it. I just—" She trailed off, and then she said, the only honest thing she'd offered all morning, "I wasn't thinking about you at all." The words hit like a cold blade, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I could see it in her face. She hadn't once considered the woman behind the man she was sleeping with. I suddenly felt tired, exhausted actually. "Did you ever think about stopping?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered, "but he made me feel like he needed me, like you didn't." There it was, the twisted justification, the lie that allowed her to sleep at night. I stared at her, trying to see the person behind the betrayal. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't evil. She was selfish, careless, weak, and that kind of person could destroy lives without even noticing the wreckage. I stepped back, letting her see the finality in my eyes. "I'm not here for revenge against you," I said. "I'm not here to scream or cry. I just wanted you to see the woman whose life you helped tear apart." She nodded, eyes glossy. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am." Maybe she was. Maybe she wasn't. It didn't matter. I didn't need her remorse. I needed my power back. "This ends today," I said. "I'm done being invisible." She nodded again, but I was already turning away. The receptionist stared as I passed, sensing something heavy in the air. I walked out of the building, down the cold street, breathing in the winter air like it was medicine. I thought I might feel closure or satisfaction or something that resembled victory. But what I felt was sharper, clearer, a decision forming with every step. Meeting Madison wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far bigger. Because now I didn't just know the truth, I owned it. And Daniel had no idea that the woman he underestimated was walking home with a new fire burning behind her ribs, one that would scorch everything he thought he controlled. My revenge wasn't going to be loud, it wasn't going to be messy, it was going to be precise, patient, devastating, and it would start the moment I walked back into our apartment and looked him in the eyes, as the woman he never believed I could become. The walk back home felt like moving through a different version of the city, one where every sound echoed louder and every shadow stretched longer. It wasn't fear pulsing in my chest anymore, it was purpose. A slow, steady burn that kept me warm despite the winter wind slicing across my face. I wasn't the same woman who had left that apartment hours earlier. I had looked the other woman in the eyes and watched her crumble under the weight of what she'd done. And just like I expected, it didn't heal anything. It didn't stitch together the ripped pieces of my marriage or soften the bruises left by Daniel's betrayal. But it did do something else. It clarified who the real enemy was. The betrayal had two faces, but only one had vowed to love me. Only one had promised faithfulness, devotion, honesty. Only one had stood in front of our friends and family and sworn he would protect my heart, and only one had shattered it. When I reached the apartment building, I paused at the door, staring at the familiar bricks, the welcome mat I bought on sale, the potted plant that had somehow survived months of neglect. It felt strange stepping back into the life I had lived passively for so long. Now every detail felt like evidence of how small I had allowed myself to become. When I entered the apartment, it was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel wasn't home yet. His predictable absence used to ache. Now it was an advantage. I walked into the bedroom and opened the box where I had hidden the lipstick and the hotel receipt. They looked even uglier now, sitting there under the afternoon light. I set them neatly on the bed, like items prepared for a trial. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't hitch. I felt strangely calm, like my body knew exactly what to do next. It started with bank statements. I pulled out the laptop, opened our accounts, and began combing through transactions with a precision I didn't know I was capable of. Every dinner, every hotel charge, every ride service, every suspicious Venmo memo, it all began forming a clear pattern. He was sloppy because he believed I would never look. He underestimated me so deeply that he didn't even try to hide the financial breadcrumbs leading straight to his deception. Then I opened a new document and started taking notes. Dates, amounts, locations, screenshots of emails he forgot to delete, clues buried in calendars, confirmations tucked behind promotional spam. It was like building a case against a criminal, except the criminal shared my last name. By the time the sun began to set, I had a folder full of evidence, organised, labelled, unarguable. I stared at it for a long moment, then whispered to myself, "He doesn't get to lie his way out of this." My phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "Running late, try not to stress." I almost laughed, not a real laugh, a hollow, sharp, humourless sound. He still talked to me like I was fragile glass, like I was something breakable that needed coddling. If only he knew how unbreakable I had become. I made dinner anyway, not because I wanted to, but because routine was a disguise. Revenge works best when it doesn't announce itself. When Daniel finally walked in, smelling of cologne that wasn't mine and wearing the same smug confidence that had once charmed me, I didn't flinch. "Hey babe," he said, setting his keys down. "Smells amazing." I didn't respond. I simply handed him a plate, sat across from him and watched him eat. He didn't notice the way I studied him. His eyes, his expression, the small twitch in his jaw whenever he lied. Dinner passed like it always did. Me asking polite questions, him giving half-true answers. Except tonight, every word he spoke was another thread snapping inside me. After we finished, he leaned back and sighed dramatically. "You're quiet today." "Just thinking," I said. "About what?" "Our marriage." He froze for a fraction of a second. Not long enough for an untrained eye, but I saw it. The tension in his shoulders. The split-second calculation behind his eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked. I almost admired his performance. Almost. "We'll talk later," I said quietly. That terrified him more than yelling would have. He left for the shower, and I stayed at the table, running my fingers along the edge of the evidence folder inside my bag. When he came out, he was wearing sweatpants and the t-shirt I bought him last Christmas, the one he always said was too sentimental. He sat next to me on the couch, pretending to focus on the TV. His leg bounced nervously. That told me everything. He knew something was coming. He could feel the shift, even if he didn't understand it. "Anna," he said softly, "you're scaring me a little." "Good," I said. The word landed between us like a stone. He blinked, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said slowly, turning to face him, "that you should be scared." It was the first time I had ever watched fear enter his eyes, the first time the balance of our marriage tilted in my direction. He opened his mouth to speak, but I stood up and walked to the bedroom. "Come here," I said. He followed, hesitant, like a man walking toward his own verdict. When he stepped into the room, he saw the lipstick and the hotel receipt neatly displayed on the bed. His face drained of colour. "Anna, what is this?" he whispered. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and watched his entire world begin to unravel. And then I said the line that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Sit down, Daniel. We're not done yet." Daniel didn't sit. He hovered instead, like a trapped animal trying to decide whether to run or beg. His eyes darted from the lipstick to the hotel receipt, to me, and I watched the denial rise in him like a reflex. "Anna, this isn't what you think," he muttered, voice cracking in the middle. "Please let me explain." I folded my arms, leaning against the dresser, the calmness inside me unsettling even to myself. "Explain," I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, panic flickering across his features. She's just a friend I was helping. She's been going through things." "Stop." My voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through his sentence like a blade. "Daniel, if you want to lie, at least respect me enough to make the lie believable." His jaw clenched, his eyes hardened, and then, just like that, his expression shifted into something colder, defensive, cornered, vicious. "Fine," he snapped. "What do you want me to say? It just happened. I didn't mean for any of it to happen." He started pacing, hands in his hair. "You've been so distant. You never have energy anymore. You're always tired or stressed. I felt alone." "You cheated because you were lonely?" I asked, tilting my head, "or because you thought I wouldn't fight back?" The colour drained from his face again. I stepped forward. "And before you start rewriting the story, I met Madison today." His spine stiffened. He froze. "You... what?" "I went to her office," I said calmly. "We talked." His face twisted with panic. "Anna, she's lying. Whatever she told you, she twisted it." "She didn't have to twist anything," I said. "Your messages were very clear." I opened my bag, pulled out the folder, and let it fall onto the bed. Pages slipped out like evidence in a trial. Screenshots, receipts, hotel bookings, transfers, emails, photos. He stared at them, horror spreading across his face. "Anna, why did you do this?" he whispered. I laughed softly. "Why did I do this?" I repeated. "You cheated on me for months, and you're asking why I collected proof." He shook his head like he was trying to force a different reality into existence. "I can fix this," he said suddenly. "We can go to counselling. We can start fresh. I'll block her. I'll delete everything. I'll change. Just don't throw this away." That was the thing that surprised me most. He thought I still wanted him. That somewhere inside me, the version of myself he had created still existed. That I would cling to him out of habit, fear, or desperation. I walked past him, opened the closet, and pulled out a suitcase. His eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Packing your things," I said. "You're leaving." "No," he breathed, stepping forward. "No, Anna, don't do this. You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." My voice didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. It was the first time I'd ever told him no and meant it. He reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me." Something dark crossed his face, not regret, not pain, but anger that his control was slipping. "So that's it," he spat. "You're just going to throw away years together over a few mistakes?" "Mistakes?" I repeated quietly. "Daniel, forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Cheating for months isn't." He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "You don't get the final say anymore." He stared at me, breathing hard. "Where am I supposed to go?" "To the woman you called your escape," I said. "Or to one of the hotels you paid for with our joint account." His jaw tightened. "You're going to regret this." "No," I said. "You are." He stood there for a long moment, chest heaving, eyes locked on me, as if he was searching for the version of me he used to manipulate. But she was gone, dead, buried, replaced by someone forged in betrayal and silence and clarity. Slowly, he gathered his things, stuffing clothes into the suitcase with jerky movements. I watched him pack his lies, his excuses, his arrogance. When he zipped the suitcase shut, he turned to me, eyes shining with a fury he didn't bother to hide. "You're destroying our marriage," he said. "No," I whispered. "You destroyed it. I'm just setting the fire out." He lifted the suitcase and walked past me, shoulders rigid, breathing sharp. At the doorway, he paused. "You'll regret this," he repeated, softer this time, almost like a curse. I didn't answer. I simply closed the door behind him and locked it. The silence afterward was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. But then something unexpected happened. I breathed, a full, deep breath that expanded my ribs in a way I hadn't felt in years. The apartment wasn't empty. It was finally mine. I walked back to the bedroom, gathered the evidence and put it away. I didn't need it anymore. The truth had already done what it needed to do. I went to the kitchen, made myself tea, and sat in the exact chair where I once waited for him, begging for scraps of affection. Now I sat there as a woman who had saved herself. My life wasn't magically fixed. My heart wasn't healed. My future wasn't certain. But I was free. And freedom, I realized, is not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, soft, a steady pulse beneath your skin, a sunrise no one can take from you. I touched the edge of my canvas, then picked up the brush, and for the first time in years I painted, not to escape, but to begin again.